I want to welcome, Deborah and Sophie to the stage. So, please come on up, and we'll definitely be getting into more great information on innovations from Asia. It is my pleasure to introduce Deborah Weinswig. From many of you may know her, and her Coresight, Research business. But certainly, again, Deborah has always been on the leading edge herself in terms of what's happening, not just in China but around the world and in the grand world of retail. So we're thrilled that she could join us here today and share some of what we asked her to do was really say what's working, what's not, what translates back to like our markets here. So without further ado, you got a microphone right behind you there.
Perfect. So we're going to spend the first 10 to 12 minutes talking about what translates from the east to the west and what doesn't. And, ping me, or I assume Gelf will get the slides out. But these are definitely yours to have. And then Sophie's going to join me. So one of my favorite topics from having lived in Greater China was live streaming. And we've certainly seen a slower uptake in the US than we would have thought. And so we're going to address that. So let's get started. So Coresight writes a lot of research. It's all proprietary, literally all of our own data, et cetera. So it's all original research. We do put out 1 to 2 pieces a day. We have a 35-person, really global team. So the team is based between US, China, Hong Kong, Lagos, Tel Aviv, UK, Zurich, et cetera, and we have a large team in India as well. And so the idea is, how do we kind of bridge a lot of what we learn here and kind of make it applicable? And that's really what we love doing. And so our advisory arm will take the kind of technology solutions, the practicalities, and then make that a reality. So it was actually great. I really miss, I'm starting to travel a lot again internationally, but had a call a few weeks ago with our kind of Greater China team. And we had our head of India join us, and it was a really interesting conversation because, shockingly, we were all on the exact same page in terms of what's working and what's not working. And so this is just kind of an overview. We actually wrote a proprietary piece of research on this. I'm absolutely obsessed with this topic because this idea that you can have CGIs as influencers, some of them are making $10 million a year. And they don't need to sleep, they don't need to eat, they aren't divas. And so this idea that you can really start to change, and what we're seeing is many of the brands are creating their own CGIs. We're seeing it work both, I would say, really throughout kind of Asia, and specifically kind of China, Japan. We are starting to see this in the US, but I think that the consumer in China I have to tell you, I've seen them sing, and I'm like, I would have thought if I hadn't known that it was truly a real person. And so that's kind of where your mind is like, what am I watching? What am I not watching? And it's really been quite interesting. So we actually started back in 2015, 2016. We have a lab in Shanghai helping many of the Western brands who we had brought to China with their live streaming. And there was a lot of debates that went on, and it was an area that was somewhat foreign to them. This idea that through short-form video that you could actually sell product and that you had somebody on the other end who was asking you questions. Now, to me, my goal, literally for the rest of this year, is I want to help sustainability be associated with live streaming. Because there's a lot of greenwashing going on. Longaberger, which is a platform here in New York, their return rate is 2% when something's bought through a live stream. When it's bought through their e-commerce website, it's 40%, which is the industry average. And so we've seen from an extensive amount of work that it's about a 50% reduction. 2% is certainly on the low end. But to me, the easiest thing to do right now from a sustainability perspective is just to reduce returns. And so we are seeing live streaming work in the US. I think it's come on slower than we would have expected. As of right now, our predictions for this year in the US are about 20 billion, and in China it's 497 billion. And considering that was about an 18-month difference in terms of when everything started, that's a pretty big gap. I think some of it's payments, some of it's ecosystem, some of it is retailers wanting to have everything on their own website instead of on a platform. But we're gonna drill Sophie and kind of get her take on why this is not necessarily as big as we would have expected right now. So this is a very interesting point, this idea of O to O, right? Online to offline. So here in the US, we would call it, right, as the D2C or DNVB, digitally native brands, are looking to move into a physical space. And what we're seeing is, right, many of the malls, I mean, the A+ malls, I mean, they're more than 100% full right now, which is also something we've never seen. But some of the, let's call them B+, B malls are actually creating, if you will, space for D2C companies to try and really understand what it means to be physical. Because not only is there the checkout, there's merchandising, there's marketing, right? You're right in front of the customer, right? It's not like you're hiding behind your phone or something like that. And so we have seen, right? I mean, there's obviously some great examples, Warby Parker, Allbirds, et cetera, who've made this move seamlessly. Others, it has been more challenging. But this is obviously, in this cookieless world, et cetera, this is something that's a huge focus right now for a lot of these D2C companies. And is right, online conversion has gone down and other things that are, hot topics of today. As we think about social commerce and how, I mean, I would say in much of Asia specifically, like many of my friends have WeChat stores. And so I buy from their store, right? Because I know them, I trust them. And what we've seen here in the US, I actually think, I mean, maybe I was late to get to this epiphany, but there's so many places that we can do this, right? I mean, it's a problem of riches, right? Because we can be on Facebook, we can be on Instagram, we can be on YouTube, we can be on TikTok. I mean, all of these different platforms. And so everyone is coming together, but in different platforms. And I think there's a friction almost around that. And what we're hearing is the number one most important point right now is community. And so I do think that there's a huge opportunity there. Another one of my favorite topics, going back to sustainability, is quick commerce. So last year, my son's birthday is 9/22. I, as a traveling mom, try to do the best I can. And so I was literally at a grocery shop. I took the red eye. I'm like, I'm going to get home just in time to give him this, Carvel cake that came from Amazon. Well, the cake arrived, and it was completely melted, honestly at kind of an angle. He was still thrilled I was there, and he had the cake and whatnot. So he leaves, he goes off to school, and so I don't usually, but I called Amazon. And they're like, go to your local grocery store. I said, if I had a local grocery store, that's what I would have done. But I live in Manhattan. That doesn't work. And so what I did, which I've never done, not as a Wall Street analyst or anything else, I literally took to Twitter and I said, shame on you, Amazon, da-da-da. I should have ordered from GoPuff. At which point, the CEO of GoPuff reaches out to me. He's like, what kind of cake do you want? And so I started to use GoPuff a lot. And I was like, it completely changed how much waste we had in our home. Because I was ordering things a day before, the day of, on my way home from wherever I was. And because it was basically real-time needs, there was, I wasn't going to Costco and buying, right, like the 5 pounds of apples per se. So it was a very interesting, kind of personal experience. But what we're seeing, I think this idea of just in time, the excitement, I mean, but hey, it could be, right, I'm going to someone's house, I forgot to get a bottle of wine, it's somebody's birthday, I don't have the candles. This idea, and there's a fun aspect to it. I mean, if you're in Manhattan and you're like continuously dodging some of these bikes, it's not as fun, but I do think that there's something to say here, and certainly we've seen a lot in India and throughout China in terms of quick commerce. All right, what does not work? So I remember getting off a plane one time. I think I was obviously jet lagged. And I was like, I landed in the US and I was like, how do I get a car to get back to my apartment? Because I'm like, I'd been in China for a while, and I was like so used to being in WeChat, right? So you're all in one app. Everything's there, right? Like at the time, it was like Didi was kind of how I would access. And so it was interesting. So then I chose Uber or Lyft. And then I got on my way home, I was like, oh, I need to have something for dinner. So then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to look at like DoorDash and Uber Eats and all of these. And so this like proliferation of apps, I think makes us, first of all, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort, and it does kind of bring down the simplicity of things. And I think one of the other challenges is, right, there's so many different communication channels. we've done a lot of research around, right, the penetration of Apple Pay. I've just been surprised that it has been so slow. But I think it goes back to, right, Americans have credit cards. It's easy enough for them to change to something else. That in and of itself is friction. And so I do think that there is that idea, what we've seen, throughout the rest of the world are, payment ecosystems that then integrate into all of the different shopping platforms and do make it incredibly easy to shop and fast. The other aspect here is around kind of digital collectibles. And what we've seen more in the US is kind of NFTs where there is either a physical component or there is an access token. There could be the virtual and the physical. But in China right now, it's just, right, this idea around collecting, not necessarily being able to have a second or a third life and, kind of thinking about value. And then there are many examples of countries in the East that have come to the West where sizing was an issue, just because, we're still seeing this proliferation of different sizing apps, but it is incredibly challenging, even for US retailers. And that's it. So I'm going to invite Sophie to the stage where we're going to dive into what's happening with live streaming.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I think it's on.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Now you hear me.
So, Sophie, if you were to summarize, especially coming from Europe, how do you view live streaming in the East, in Europe, and the US? What stages is it at? And what is it going to take to kind of get us to, I would say, a more sustainable level?
Well, if I start out by saying that we launched live stream shopping or live video shopping back in 2019 over in Europe, it was very early. It was pre-pandemic. People thought we had lost it, but we came with this idea, say, hey, you should do like an interactive stream and have people ask questions and sell in a video. And they were like, what? But pretty much with the tailwind of COVID, a lot of retailers tried this out and realized that they got engagement. They kept people on their website for 9 to 12 minutes. They had a fourth of them engaging, asking questions, and they created a very great relationship with their customers. So over the course of 12 months, I would say, we went from very few customers to over 100. We went from, cosmetics, beauty, fashion that were very close to the influencer marketing sphere, hence that kind of leap was less scary, into going automotive, appliances, everything you can think of, groceries. And when we started coming over here to the States, that's roughly a year and a half ago now, with the examples that we had from Europe, we gained some trust. And I think that we are now seeing what we saw in Europe a year ago or 2 years ago. Like, we're starting to gain that traction. We're getting the big names on board. They are trying, they're daring. But I think a few things that we learned was, one, this is not going to happen in the way it happened over in China and Asia. We went to market with an idea of shortening purchase funnels, reducing returns, meaning once you're having a dialogue with your consumers and they can ask questions about fitting, size, pricing, put together smart home, you name it, they will know what they're buying. So the purchase consideration funnel will decrease significantly. And the way that consumers then know what they're buying, hence not returning, will also increase. So I think we have seen an adoption in Europe where brands have found their own way. It's not that bargain 2, 3, 5, 10-hour streams with a lot of promotions. It's either kind of, let's call them evergreen content with experts, educational. They teach their viewers, they're their customers. They build this community around, like, we know what we're selling, a dermatologist, a designer, an expert. Or they're using it in a way of engaging. So they're doing like the entertainment, shop-attainment thing with creators and cool people and, building communities. And we're selling everything. We don't necessarily do promotions. It's for all verticals, and it's for all kind of commerce.
So I think it's been really interesting, and I really like to see, was in China, right, where farmers became their own brand, right? So this idea that I want to have, Jim's lemons, and I want to have Kent's oranges. And so you gave people in these like fifth-tier cities, right, this opportunity to brand themselves and to really have a revenue stream. What have you seen outside of China, and where do you think we're going from a farmer perspective specifically?
Oh, that's a very niche question. Let me broaden it slightly. I'm not that much into farming, but I think we saw that not necessarily who's good at video on social media will make it in a live stream. We're talking about a very different behavior. It's a dialogue. It's something, you need to be engaging, you need to be explaining and teaching and working with consistency. But I think the most interesting part that came up over in Europe was that so many retailers, and that could be a farmer, so many brands and retailers, they do have talent they have no clue they have. So by chance, they might put I remember one fashion show in Europe, they put their web designer because they were running out of people, and she smashed it. And they were like, where's that girl? Can she come? But she's a web designer. She's not even one of our PR people. So we often tell the retailers, do auditions, like think outside of the box. There might be a farmer or your customer success agent or someone in your store. That's awesome, because it's a different thing to be engaging and interact and sell something in video. It's not like being simply on TikTok or YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Some of the retailers we've worked with, like we're very much believers. First of all, some of the challenges that retailers have had with kind of retaining staff and whatnot, if this is a way that they can kind of accrue additional, earnings, but also, right, this idea that they're starting to become influencers. And so we've seen some retailers who are actually paying a commission to their associates. They're elevating their associates, right? They're giving.
Let me add to that. So over in Europe, we have a bunch of different, pretty big retail chains that are building out, like in their store, they're making their stores become live shopping like destinations, and they are auditioning their staff, they are training their staff, and when they're not on the floor selling, they are taking either one-to-one, like two-way video commerce calls, or they are hosting one-to-many shows. So we have an entire segment of store staff over in Europe that are now becoming like live stream experts, and they have like their own career. People recognize them on the street, people follow them on on LinkedIn and Instagram. So it's becoming something over in Europe, and I think give this another 9 to 12 months, like jump on the train right now, and this will be the same thing here in the US. We will find the most unexpected talents doing live stream shopping.
If you look at the categories, what categories do you think are, will benefit the most from live streaming, and where do you think is the biggest surprise from a category perspective?
I think everyone who's selling something where you need to stand out, do that in live video. As some speakers a couple of sessions ago said, we're kind of selling the same stuff with different logos. I think that's kind of key. If you manage to create a community, engage with them, understand them, and a lot of the younger generations are very vogue. They vote with their wallets. They know that they want to understand who they're buying from. And if you have the courage as a brand to go live, to have their questions come in and answer them, that requires a lot of gut from a brand to be that transparent. And I think those brands will win in the long run. And that can be any segment. It doesn't have to be beauty or fashion. It can be groceries. It can be farmers. The biggest surprise that we discovered 2 years back was that luxury had a great played a great role in this transition. Or rather luxury, I would say high AOV kind of companies. So you're selling cars, you're selling very expensive skincare regimens, you're selling extremely expensive outfits. And all of a sudden, those clients, they really need to get guidance. They need to feel comfortable. They need confidence to purchase. And having someone that you can interact with and ask questions, well, I'm looking at these two car models. How should I be thinking before I go into the car dealers? Or really, like with this kind of skin, what regimen should I put together? Or why should I spend two grand on a jacket? And that's where we saw great traction. That was unexpected to us. But now we know that it's a great opportunity. For the more complex products you have, the higher AOV you have, don't be afraid. That's exactly where you can go and nail it.
Yeah, and on the luxury side, we've seen, I think they seem to understand better this idea of limited time, limited quantity, limited offer. Some of the, let's say, more, mainstream retailers and brands we've worked with, I'm like, create a bundle, and they're like, oh, but then we have to go to merchandising, and then it becomes this very complex process. As we think about it, who should own live streaming in the organization, and who should be accountable for their success, the success?
This is a very good question, and this is something we have been battling with for 3 years now. So I think we usually end up in between the marketing and the e-com, right? Someone wants to drive sales, someone wants to make cool events. It started out to a large extent to be this kind of hype. Oh, let's do an event once a month and bring someone on and do it from a store. And brand and marketing owns it. And then it became, well, you can actually work with evergreen content and something that can stay on your website over time. And it became a conversion engine, like 10 to 12% of everyone watching a live stream on a proper e-com site tend to convert. So it's a huge conversion machine. Ideally, where we see success is where brand and retailers invest in having an internal advocate. like an internal champion. There needs to be someone that owns this from A to Z. And I'm pretty sure that give this another 2-3 years maybe, and there will be the heads of live commerce, the VP of live commerce, and that will tie together the events, the branding, the omni-channel experiences, because a lot of these shows are happening in between stores, and the e-commerce performance. So I think it's kind of like when most people in this room probably remember when Facebook became a thing or when influencer marketing became a thing, and you started like having your intern just try it out and see how it did. We're kind of arriving at a moment where you need to have dedicated people. This will be a proper profession. And I can tell you, a lot of young people, they can have very different backgrounds. They really nail this. So I would say invest, figure out someone that's dedicated, because if you're just going to hand it off to someone that likes TikTok, it's never going to work. You need to have a proper schedule. You need to work with a marketing calendar. You need to have the right stakeholder buy-in from day one. And I would say you need budget. Not because it has to be a complex setup in itself, but you need to run this for months. You need consistency to make this work, and daily and weekly.
You bring up so many things that I think are really critical. So number one, right, this ability to train people to live stream, right? We've really seen very little of that here in the West. And so, right, I mean, there's entire schools that we've seen in China, and I think there is, right, because it goes back to, right, there is a relationship angle. There's also a, yes, you are, I mean, they call them KOLs, right, a key opinion leader, but this idea that I trust you, I've built a relationship with you, and now I trust you to buy something from you, as opposed to I trust your advice, right? Those are in some ways two different things. Secondly, as you think about, kind of the ownership, I actually think, so I've never liked the word omnichannel, because that isn't really what's happening right now. But if you think about it, you have the physical and you have e-commerce. Live streaming is that bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think if we have that, right, then we're truly in an omnichannel world.
But let me just add to that. Like, I used to tell people, like, imagine anything is possible. You have a video, you have a stream that can be projected onto big screens in your stores, can be on your website. We can cast it onto social media. You can stream from your showroom, from your designer studio, from your store, from anywhere. When you travel, when you meet people, you can walk around in the street. Everything can be done in video, and it can be casted everywhere. That's truly bridging, right, between online and offline, instead of saying, well, you can buy online and return in store. Yeah, that's omnichannel, but I think the true experience we're after here is making sure that the generations that live and breathe online, blended all the time, feel like my brand, I can meet them on a big screen, on my phone, in the store, and it kind of really speaks to me, the kind of engagement that we're doing here.
So as you look at the data, what do you see in terms of differences with males and females, and also in terms of different generations, in terms of how they're adopting it?
Well, let me surprise you and say this is not a tool for Gen Z only, which is a very common misperception. In Europe, a lot of brands that are targeting, let's say, people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they do television commercials, because these are people that grew up with like a QVC kind of shopping experience. So there's a way of talking to your audience. I wouldn't say we have more success in the younger versus the older generations. It's more like figuring out the way of reaching them. Like, my dad loves live video shopping. It's like he goes on YouTube and Google's tutorials, and then he wants to buy a smart home, and he can, watch a live show, ask all the questions as if he walked into a store. So that kind of old school store experience, but brought online. And then you have the generations where everything is like short attention span, jumping between apps, notifications, everything just happening in video. And then you wonder when they go from an Insta story onto a web page, why we have like a 1% conversion, because they face planting onto something static from a very engaging reality. So make sure that once they come back from that fun, buzzing world, that the e-com experience is equally fun. And that's what live shopping is. So I think both generations, there isn't really, just depending on how you use this tech to talk to your target audience.
That's really interesting. I mean, what we've seen too is that men actually tend to spend more than women in aggregate, and women kind of are more engaged and go on more frequently. And so it's really quite interesting in terms of, but like, everybody is on. This isn't kind of, it's ageless, it's genderless. I mean, it's, as we think about it, it really is an opportunity to just learn more about what you're purchasing before you buy it. And I think the interesting thing in the West, which we haven't seen these, is that the community around the stream, right, and who's there, right, that is very critical. And so it's like, oh, hey, Sally, I'm going to see you next week at noon on Wednesday, right, for the next stream. And so the idea is that they're meeting with their friends around this brand or kind of story every week, I mean, I would, if we had our way, it would be every day, but for now I'm happy with every week. And that I think is fascinating, this idea around the community aspect.
Yeah, I think community is key. And I usually say we see the greatest success. It's not about how big your brand is, how much website traffic you have, how much social media following you have. It's how committed your community is to your brand. We have this niche D2C, you'd never believe me, like making their own Brady little bracelets, selling bananas for like half an hour because their followers are so dedicated. And then you have this huge, super fancy, global brand try to do a live stream and no one really cares. So it's community based for sure. Like everything with engagement, you need to figure out how do I engage with my community. And I think brands that aren't starting to think right now on how to be engaging 1 to 2 years ahead from now will lose a lot of market share. And I'm pretty sure, e-commerce will be interactive. If you start now, you will probably need 6 to 9 months to figure out what's the recipe for my target audience. How does my brand translate into video when I'm not just a fancy feed or a high-performing website? And start doing that research and start trial and error right now will be crucial because I promise you, what we see in Europe is coming here, and if what we see in Asia is here in 2-3 years, you want to know what works for your brand when it hits.
Yeah, you bring up something very important, which is this idea around the fancy feed, because what we've seen in many cases, right, is so many of these brands want to, they're thinking about, a catalog or photos, right? Everything is perfect. And to me, it's actually the mistakes in a live stream itself that make a live stream, right? You want to drop something, right? You were talking about...
Well, I had a fun story. We started working with an equestrian brand, clothes for people that love horses. And they had this gorgeous setup with this horse in the countryside. And all of a sudden, he just jumps off the fence and it runs away. And they're like, oh my God, the horse. And the whole live show just loses his focus. And it was an awesome show. People were like, remember that show when the horse just ran off? And I think that's kind of it. And certain brands, they cannot really get their stage one because that's not their brand image, their brand persona. But I think just get started. Go lo-fi, go personal. Don't make it such a big deal. Get started. Because we know that what people are looking for in this day and age is a genuine connection. We started having these glossy magazines. They became too glossy. We went on to social media. Social media became these glossy feeds. We started going to stories and reels. Now the stories and reels are also so, they're managed, they're paid. Let's go to video. Let's just talk directly to our consumers. Let's not leave the power to social media platforms or to influencers or creators. Just bring your clients home and engage with them and show them that you're not perfect, because perfection isn't really what works right now.
So one stat that I'd love to talk about is what we see in terms of the differences in the West with buying during the stream or after, and why it's important for the video to live on your site, and how, if you can compare and contrast that to the East.
So I think it's very much about the live, the promotion, buy it now. When we look at what has been going on in Asia over the last 5 to 6 years, in Europe, we're seeing that roughly 60 to 70% of all purchases happen in what we call the replay. So you run a live stream, you keep it on your website, and that's kind of the technology my company is providing, a live stream on your e-commerce that stays on your e-commerce and is still shoppable once it's becomes a replay. And with 60 to 70% of purchasing happening in the replay, that tells you a lot about what you kind of value add there is apart from just the live event. So we say put snippets on your P2P pages, put them in your newsletters, send them have these editorial setups. So see this more of a way of taking your entire marketing calendar, figuring out what in this calendar can be made video and what has to be live on the spot, promotion driven, 12 hours only, if you snooze, you lose, and what can be material I do in video and that I keep for a month, for a season. So you can work, I would say, event and evergreen, and you can work short time span and something that's relevant for months. And that's how you drive over time very interesting ROI out of a product like live video shopping.
All right, so I'm going to give a shameless plug for something Sophie and I are doing together, which is the 3rd year of our 10/10 Shopping Festival. So during the pandemic, I wanted to try and figure out what could we do to give back. And we started to see these challenges around supply chain, and I'm like, one thing we can do is pull holiday earlier, right? So if we can pull it and just get it earlier every year. So we created this October 10th, right? Borrowed shamelessly from 11/11, but it worked. And so we had the 10/10 Shopping Festival, and in the first year we had an unbelievable amount of companies join us, and we actually have a whole give back. So we require everyone who's joining us to give 10% back to charity. Last year, I was like, let's try something different. So we had it all with live streaming. And, we at Coresight, our give back was to help the retailers and brands learn how to do live stream. And this year, Sophie's joined us. So do you want to maybe tell a little bit about
So
what
we
Amber's
do,
doing?
as Deborah mentioned, we offer live streaming on your proper e-commerce website. So for the 1010, you can do one show. We sort integration. We make sure it works. We onboard you. We give you the tip and tricks because we know what works. We can help you cut the corners. You do one live stream during 1010 to try it out. That's perfectly for free. You just need to commit that your tech team make this happen in a couple of days because you've got to run because 1010 is just around the corner.
It always works. It's always late, but it always works.
Exactly. So we're actually around here. When you come up the escalators, close to that corner, there's my team over there. If you want to know more about 1010, walk over there, talk to them. We'd like to have as many admissions as we can.
And I want to really give a shout out too, because this year we're not asking the retailers to do the give back to charity. Actually, the platforms are doing it. So really, it's a charity called Retailers United where they're helping, kind of brands and retailers who are struggling. So thank you for really stepping up and, just being a huge influence in this whole market.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. That was wonderful. Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Sophie.